Alright, just took out at the Saranac Lake Riverwalk, and as I was getting out, it turns out a woman came over and asked if I was paddling the trail, which I said I was. She was driving by and she saw me in the river, and so she's actually a board of directors for the NFCT, which is really cool. Her name is Anne. So I chatted with her a little bit and got some information, and it was great. So it was a really nice little check-in. So now I've got a short walk through town to get over to the put in back in by the St. Regis Outfitters, where I'm going to try to get into town, do a little bit of chores, and then get back out. All right, rain for real. So this is the high water portage. That level of limbo is a little too advanced for me. I'd say that's maybe a foot, probably less. I had a great time in Saranac Lake town. The outfitters were great. Got to charge my battery bank, talk to my wife on the phone, hit up the hardware store, all that good stuff. Check the weather. It was great. So now I'm back out in the Saranac River by a loud road. I saw an otter, my first ever wild otter, while I was sitting on the dock for the St. Regis Outfitters. I heard a splash behind me while I was on the phone with my wife, and I thought it was a fish, and I turned and there was an otter just looking right at me. It was really cool. So that was fun. So I've got this very short carry to the other side of this bridge, and then I keep going for a ways, and then I get to the mile portage around the rapids. Separator Rapids, I believe, or Permanent Rapids, one of those. All right, last portage of the day. It's been raining all day. It's raining not as hard now as it was earlier. I'm at the Franklin Falls carry, heading over to Union Pond. And if you have gotten at all annoyed about me talking about the last time I was here or my other trip, then you'll be happy to know this is the farthest I got that time. So from this step forward, everything here is new. So bring on the adventure. Have roughly 3 or 4 more miles to go. On a day like this where I'm already soaking wet and it's cold and it's going to be cold tonight, I'm not in a rush to settle down and get into camp because I'm just going to be cold. I'm going to put on all sorts of dry clothes and then deal with making dinner and stuff, so I'd rather kind of just ride it out and stay warm and wet from being active. So I'm going to get down to the other end of the portage and put into the water and then try to go find camp. Well, this is the lightest it's looked since it started raining around noon. At least off this way. That's to the west over there, where the front's coming from. Wind's died down a little bit. You can see down to the south, it's not quite as nice over there. Alright, good morning. This is morning 6. I'm on Union Pond. It isn't raining, which is fantastic. It's very chilly. I got down to about 35. It's about 36 right now, according to my thermometer. And breezy. I'm on a point that faces out to the west, and there's a breeze coming from the west, so it's kind of blowing on me, so I'm probably I'll move on quicker than average just to get some blood flowing. I'm sort of at the very end, for now, of the bigger bodies of water that are pondish, lake-ish for simplicity. I'm about ready to do the big drop down and the big rise back up in elevation of the trail. So that goes essentially from the north end of Union Pond. The Saranac River drops down quite a bit through a bunch of very difficult rapids that probably almost nobody runs, and then goes to a little town of Clayburgh, and then it turns to the east, and then it flows for a ways to Plattsburgh, which is down in Lake Champlain. And then you have the Champlain crossing with the Hero Islands, and then you enter into Vermont, where you have the most upstream paddling of the trail. So based on the fact that I am by myself, the water is very cold, and I'm a pretty cautious person by nature, and I have a nice new carbon Kevlar boat, today is going to be a lot of walking. I have about maybe a 2-mile paddle in the morning, and then it's going to be an 8-mile walk on the road. Fortunately, my portage wheels seem to be holding up great, so today will be their first endurance test, and then from there it's like a 7-mile paddle to another portage, and the campsite that I'm planning on staying at is at the other end of that portage. Alright, just got to the north end of Union Pond, and this little thing was fierce. The wind didn't know what it wanted to do. It's mostly out of the west, if you see the flag over there. But man, I had to like cut straight across from my point to the far side, and even over there it was still really windy somehow. It was just like blowing from every direction. And then every time I was going to approach a point that I thought for sure it's going to block the wind, I'd get there and it'd be coming from a slightly different direction. So I had to work for that. But here I am now. I can hear the dam over there. I have to go explore and figure out where the road is, and this is the beginning of my really long road walk. Oh, I feel 50 pounds lighter, and there's a reason for that, because I am. So, the day that I left, I said on the Facebook group that I was getting started, and a guy named Craig reached out to me and gave me a cell phone number and told me he was the river steward for the Saranac down at Plattsburgh. And so when I was in Saranac Lake yesterday, I gave his cell phone a call and left him a voicemail just asking how the river conditions were. So fast forward to about half an hour ago, and I was doing my 8-mile portage down Cary Road to Silver Street, and he was doing some trail maintenance at a campsite and called out my name as I was walking up and offered to give me a shuttle over the thing, but I'm a little bit too much of a purist, so I said, as much as I don't really want to walk 5 more miles on the road, I'm going to, just for the completionist in me. However, he offered to bring my dry bag ahead for me, and I didn't turn that down. I don't consider that cheating. Me and my boat are on this road for 5 more miles. I count that. So he takes care of a campsite, I think it's on his property, down just by the High Falls Portage Dam, High Falls Dam, something like that. So yeah, so I'm basically portaging and then doing a short paddle to there, and he said that he's gonna make me some burgers tonight and hang out and talk canoe trail and all sorts of stuff. So my day just got a lot easier. So thank you, Craig. Okay, so these are the Separator Rapids. I just went through some really fun Class 1. Craig, the river steward, said a little bit of Class 2 because of the water levels, and it was a lot of fun. This, however, is rated at 3+, which is definitely more than I'm looking to do on this trip. There's a big group of people here in whitewater kayaks enjoying it in dry suits though, so good for them. Alright, this is the last of the Separator Rapids. Comes through this construction under the bridge, shoots its way out, and there's a little bit more going on down there, maybe a little Class 2, so that's where I'm headed from this nice little pool. Through that I'll go island left, probably stick to the right, and the portage actually comes down over this bridge. You hop the guardrail and there's a very skinny little path that comes down to this put in. So there's a lot more current to the river than I was expecting. The guidebook talked about like a little bit of Class 1 right when you put in, and then another little bit by a corner. But I've been in Class 1 with a little bit of Class 2 pretty much the entire time since I put in, besides the portage, which was harder. So I'm enjoying this more than I thought I was. I was a little bit nervous about it, but I'm having a blast, so I'm not complaining. This is actually a lot more fun and a lot less difficult than I was expecting. This is the High Falls Dam. You can certainly hear water roaring over it, at least I can. And then we've got the portage over here on the right. So this will actually be the last of the river I do today, because from here I continue on till Craig's property, and that's where I'll be staying tonight. Alright, just crawled out of my tent. I'm still a little groggy. I slept pretty well. I got chilly. This is morning 7. I'm currently in Clayburgh, and there's a trail steward for this section whose name is Craig, and this is his property, so he was a huge help yesterday. He showed me, by driving me to the portage put-ins and takeouts, so now I know what I'm looking for today. Gave me some tips that were really helpful about the quick water in areas that I went through yesterday, also some that I have today. And he pulled up a lot of weather information on Champlain, and just to make sure that that seemed good. So an enormous help. Anybody that ever sees this that's considering doing this section of river or trying to through paddle the NFCT, look Craig up. Amazing guy, super nice, super helpful. Then he's got a whole setup here on his property for people, so obviously that's not bear safe. He told me he didn't even think I needed to hang it up at all. That's more so for like mice and maybe a raccoon. He actually has a trail sign in. Here's my boat. He's got a privy and up that road a ways. And then he's got all these sort of amenities. He made me dinner last night, cooked some burgers. That was great. And just a beautiful property. He's got 60-something acres. And there's his goats that are smart enough they can get under and in that fence whenever they want. So they come out all the time to eat the grass over there, he said. But yeah, super helpful. So thanks, Craig. Alright, so I've been paddling for about an hour and a half this morning. The river started off quite quick with a lot more class 1, maybe some easy class 2, quick water, and then it mellows out really fast for about 7 miles until a big long portage in Katyville. So I just crossed the imaginary blue line leaving the Adirondack Park. So I wanted to say farewell to the Adirondacks. It was beautiful and fantastic. I will unquestionably be doing that section again at some point. Okay, just got to the Kent Falls Portage. So there's the dam. There's a convenient little piece of rebar scrap sticking out that makes a great thing to tie the boat off to. And that's the way it came from. It's actually a really stiff headwind for like the last mile on the river. And then because of the dam, you have a lot of current blockage. It backs up the water, makes it wider. So it's actually pretty tiring. I'm not unhappy that I'm going to wheel the boat for a bit. It'd be a nice break. So this portage is about 2 miles long on the road. All right, here's the barrier at the far end of Oxbow Road, which then leads you to this downhill to the river. And you're like, ah, all right, portage over. No, not so much. So it turns out where I'm standing right now to that far side barrier, there used to be a really old, unsafe bridge here that most paddlers would risk walking across to get to either side, because the other side portages on that road over there. Just off out of sight over there is another one of the hydraulic dams with insane-o pants water, like not close to being paddleable. So what you have to do here is like the opposite of a portage. You have to go put in down there, paddle all 200 feet over to those ledges, take out, reload everything up again, and get on that road and continue the portage down to where the water is actually paddleable. So it's like some Inception level portaging going on. So that's what I'm going to do. On the other side of that far roadwalk, which isn't too long, is where you put back in, and it's actually the beginning of like the 6-mile stretch of quick water, which is both exciting and a little nerve-wracking. So we'll get over there soon. Okay, so I made it to the other side of that little portage within a portage thing. And now I'm walking down the road to the put-in where the class 2 stuff starts, which is the major drop off the plateau. It's, like I said, about 6 miles of pretty continuous quick water from what I've heard. There's this really huge pipe next to me that's gotta be probably 15 feet in diameter. And Craig was telling me that that's what happens. It's like that dam channels water through this, and this pipe's actually what turns the turbine to create electricity. So It's kind of amazing to think all the water rushing through there. All right, got to the end of the portage, back to the river. This is the beginning of the long quick water stretch. And so I'm down scouting the first corner. It's the strongest right by the dam, I'm sure. And Craig confirmed that yesterday. This is probably the strongest of it. But it's moving pretty good. The water's higher than it normally is, which is good, meaning there's less rocks and crap I'll probably hit. But there's still these big pour overs. So the only thing I'm really trying to memorize for this first little beginning part is when I get to this big cedar tree area leaning out to get to the middle. So I avoid these first few pour overs and then try to shoot the middle right there. Other than that, it looks mostly like most of the chop is actually just waves. This is one of the spots that had me the most nervous even before the trip, because it was just a really long, continuous stretch of quick water that doesn't have a very good portage around. And I don't really want to do a 6-mile portage anyway. I found this nice little spot to kind of put in. It's got a nice little eddy right here that I can get out into the water, hopefully, and get situated before too much of the current. Okay, made it through the rapids. They were a little bigger than I was expecting. They were fun. I was a little bit nervous. They were totally manageable. There was enough water that most of the rocks weren't sticking up above the surface. So there was just a lot of waves. So overall, it was very manageable. So I'm glad that I did it and didn't find some shuttle or something like that. So I'm down at the Treadwell Portage now. Thankfully, Craig gave me more information because it looks like a spot I'm not allowed to go into, but he explained to me that the sign says unauthorized motor vehicles prohibited, but there is portage trail there. So as long as my boat fits through that chain link fence, which I sure hope it does, at least with the wheels on it, then we're gonna go do this about mile long portage. When I finished up with the Treadwell Portage and I got back to the other side of the river where you can put in under the big I-87 bridge, the water was a little bit bigger than I would have liked, and it looked like there were some technical moves. I would definitely have run it in an empty boat, especially if it wasn't on a long trip kind of thing, but I didn't want to risk it. So what I did was I stayed straight on this access road that you're on already, and it takes you all the way down until you get to a highway, and you just bear to the left, and it brings you down another continuation of the access road down to the actual second portage. So you skip that whole section and you get to the other side of the Indian Dam Portage, and then the water there is pretty quick too. It's just out of sight around that corner, but the water here is moving too. But this seems like a pretty good spot to actually put back in to continue to the next dam portage. Okay, there it is, the last actual dam portage of the day. And normally I think it would be the last portage of the day if you were to be able to ride the river through Plattsburgh, but because of the construction, the river's closed. So I do have to portage through the city of Plattsburgh for about a mile. All right, that was a bit scary. Those were unquestionably the biggest rapids of the day, and I wasn't expecting them, but these pretty big standing waves. And they were really hard to avoid because up around that river bend there, all the biggest water is on our current left-hand side, river right. And then as soon as you come around that corner, which I took really wide, all the big stuff's on river left. So trying to cut across, I went as fast as I could, and I still got caught in that big wave train. Took on a lot of water. Was a little bit nervous about capsizing, but managed to stay up in it. So, pretty big water. Okay, we made it through the detour without too much trouble. I made it to the public boat launch in Plattsburgh, and this is Lake Champlain. The sandy beach over there, kind of straight ahead, is where I'm headed tonight. Had a really bumpy, actually kind of scary ride through Plattsburgh. Just below the last dam, the water was by far the biggest it was all day, and took some sort of frantic maneuvering to get through it, and I still got soaked. I thought I might be taking a swim. But anyway, made it. I'm soaked now. I stayed dry all day through everything until the very end, but now here I am. Cumberland, that's it. Cumberland State Park. This is Cumberland Bay. And I'm about to hug the shore and paddle over to it.